Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to the season finale episode of Artistically Black, the continuing conversation on the expansiveness of the Black community, the love and labor of art, and the connection between the two. I am your host, Dannielle Hutchinson, and I'm so glad that you decided to join us this afternoon. I am excited to chat with our next guest. He is a talented artist in many different areas. He is a current MFA candidate at the David Geffen School of Drama at Yale. I had to make sure I got that right. He is a playwright, a theater educator, and a performer, here to talk about his new play, Capture the Flag. Please welcome Doug Robinson.
Hello. Thank you so much, Dannielle, for that warm introduction.
Hi, Doug. How are you?
I'm good. I'm happy to be here.
I'm so excited that you're here on our season finale episode. We, had some time to get you in the room and make sure we found a time that worked. So I'm excited to have you.
No, thank you so much. I didn't realize this was the season finale. I'm now a little like, oh gosh, okay, we gotta do the thing.
You gotta do the thing. We gotta be real professional now.
Yes, I'm gonna button
talk
this
like very professional and serious tones. Because
yes.
we're talking about the David Geffen School of Drama.
That is a place.
So I was happy to see you. I think was maybe a couple weeks ago, maybe 2 months ago at New Sass's production of Twigs and Bone. And I was so excited because I know that we had been talking about getting you on the show. And so I was like, oh, I see him. We must talk. I must make sure we get this out there. So I'm happy that you're here. So I want to jump right in and I want to talk about the David Geffen of it all.
Yeah.
And so like it's been reported and we've talked and people have seen it, this large endowment that he gave to Yale. Yeah. And so I did a very little bit of research on it. And it's making it tuition free for students, both current and future. So being an MFA candidate, how do you benefit from that?
Yeah. As a playwright, the playwriting program, which accepts 3 people a year, was already a fully funded program. And the difference between fully funded and tuition free is that while my tuition is paid for, I am also given a living stipend and some extra work study subsidy. Whereas to the students who are not within the playwriting program just have tuition free. So they'd still have to figure out their living expenses, their day-to-days, supplies, which are covered through like work study initiatives, but like it is not completely funded. And that's just like a thing that we don't say out loud all the time. Like, yes, barriers have been broken, but let's also talk about like, what does it mean to put your life on hold and not have to go into thousands and thousands of dollars of debt, but also to not have income coming in.
Right. So do you think that, Yale was already very competitive. The School of Drama was already competitive. Do you think this endowment has increased that competitiveness for the school?
I mean, well, it's hard to know, right? Like we did because it's also we're coming out of pandemic time, right? So we did a pause on applications for the 21-22 academic year because I got in 2020. So we didn't accept any new students for 21-22. And this is our first round. This will be our first year of a new influx of students. And I don't quite know what the numbers are in comparison to pre-pandemic in terms of applications. I do know there's been a lot of talk about like who can now possibly apply. And we think about people with other financial ties, people with a little bit of debt or older people with families who have things to have to cover. So we're hopeful, or at least I know a number of students are, and a few administrators I've had the privilege to like talk to are hopeful that this will widen the net of the kinds of people who will apply. So yes, more competitive in the higher number, but also more competitive in that like we want different voices and bodies and backgrounds to be able to come as well.
That's good. I mean, I think that, there needs to be a healthy dose of competitive nature. And I think that I hope that it does have the positive impact that I'm going to assume David Geffen was going for. I keep using his name like I know him, like we're friends, like we play tennis on the weekends. We don't, but David, if you're interested, I'm happy to come over and learn. So what is the MFA playwriting candidate experience like at Yale?
Yeah, it is one of focusing on your playwriting process, right? Like it is not a program that you're going to come into and be like, "Hey, we're going to teach you how to write a play."
Mm-hmm.
Right? They're not going to do that. They may provide you opportunities and moments to study specific playwrights, and we can talk about what does it mean to like pull and be inspired from those writers, but it's really saying, "Hey, Doug, hey, Dannielle, like what do you need to be your writer?" And really like spend time asking yourself that question, right? You will have now probably the only time in your life to only focus on your process. 3 years where you're paid to be a playwright. So you don't have to worry about like, oh, I have to write this play so it gets produced. I have to write this play to fit this model or mold. It's like, what do you want to write? And then you figure that out. And then you ask the question, well, how do I write this play? And they say, we don't know. Let's work with you and figure out how to write this play. Sometimes it can kind of feel a little like in kind of out to sea at times. I can be like, hey, I need help figuring out how to write this play. And they're like, cool, you figure it out. And I'm like, yes, I will, but teacher, teacher.
Mm-mm.
And they're like, yeah, like we're here to teach and help and support, but like we are not going to tell you how to do you, right? And that can sometimes be a difficult thing to overcome, especially when you've come from an education system that is like, this is how you do the thing. And now it's like, you're smart, you're thoughtful, you got into the school, like you're like, you can already write. This is giving you time to like grow yourself.
I love that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that that's a lovely approach because it does give you space to do you and to kind of figure out what works best for you in a way that feels safe and scary at the same time.
Yeah.
In terms of you do have that you have a safety net, so to speak. You have somebody that can kind of guide you from afar, so to speak, but you're still kind of out there, doing your own thing. So, speaking of that, so talking about, writing your own stuff, I want to talk about this wonderful piece of art that you wrote that I cannot wait. Honestly, I would love to direct this piece
Please.
because it is remarkable. Um, and I don't want you. This was such a it touches all of the feels. It gives you it deals with complex feelings and emotions through the lens of young preteens and children. And I don't know that we talk or give them enough space to have these kind of feelings and emotions. And I applaud you for doing that. So the name of the piece is Capture the Flag. It recently had a workshop at the Chicago Children's Theater. Can you tell me, how did it get there? How did we get to doing a workshop at Chicago Children's Theater?
Yeah. I've always loved, not always, I would say in 2017, I worked at a children's theater and I found a great love of working with young people through that. And kind of, I don't want to say a lacking, but I was having a hard time finding plays for young people that like uplifted the complexity of their lives. I read plays that were fun and charming and that like really made me laugh. But like I remember being 10, 11, and 12 and having big feelings sometimes and like needing help to work through those and not always finding adults to help and like leaning on young people to help. And so I was looking for opportunities and I saw this thing called the Reimagine New Plays in TYA, which was a BIPOC focused TYA playwriting initiative. And they said, hey, submit your idea, submit some pages, like submit anything at any stage, and we'll see how far along it gets. And I had this idea to talk about grief with young people, specifically due to a situation in my family that I can get into further if we'd like. Um, And I was like, yeah, I really want to write a play about young kids dealing with the grief of a friend, and this idea that if there aren't adults around, or the adults say, hey, go play, move on, what does it mean to have to move on and
Mhm.
play through a literal game? So the play takes place during an annual game of Capture the Flag. I was very blessed that Reimagined moved it to the second round, and it made it to the final round, and then like theaters had the opportunity to like read the plays and request the chance to workshop it and work with you. I'd always been interested in the city of Chicago, and I knew Chicago Children's Theater a little bit because a dear friend of mine worked there. And when Reimagine connected us, I was like, yeah, I think this will be a really beautiful fit. And CCT did a great job. They connected me with an amazing director named David Catlin, and the play blossomed. I did not think that was my first true workshop experience, right?
Mhm.
In a professional setting. Like I'd done a little bit at school, and the plays I'd written preschool, I'd kind of had to write and then they were done. There wasn't a lot of time to like write a play, question the play, tear it open, keep building it. So it was a lovely, beautiful room. And I'm very grateful for CCT, Reimagine, David Catlin, and that whole cast. They were just gift from God. It was amazing.
So you had started this prior to going to Yale?
No, so this the reimagine happened during my first year, that
Okay.
pandemic year, 2020, 2021,
Got
and I
it.
hadn't written the play. I just had the idea, and I used the application process of Reimagine to really get the idea out of me. And when I made it to the second round, they said, "Cool, you've sold us the idea. Feel free to send pages." And I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna see if I can write this play like right now." And in about 10 days, I wrote the first draft of this
Oh
play. And
my
I've never written anything that quickly before. I wasn't sure if I could, but it just like flowed out of me, which is rare. Like most plays don't just flow out of me.
gosh.
Most plays, I'm like beating my head against the wall, and I'm like, "You're so close, but not here." But this one, I think, because I've kind of been nursing the idea for so long that the moment the time was right for it, it just was like, "Yeah, this is the play."
Man, I love art so much.
Yeah.
So you touched on a little bit what the piece is about. When I sat down to read it, I realized that I don't actually think I have ever played Capture the Flag.
Oh.
Um, and then I said, well, I don't know what the rules are of Capture the Flag. Um, I don't even know what this game is about, but I guess it's literal. It's a literal Capture the Flag. Why did you choose that game specifically?
I mean, it's Capture the Flag was my favorite game as a kid, and I played it in my neighborhood a lot. And my neighborhood had a lot of kids. Well, it had a fair amount of kids,
Mm-hmm.
and our backyards, which as children felt like expansive forests. I go back and visit that neighborhood now, and I'm like, these are 10 trees. These are 10 trees, and I thought I was in the damn like woods of Germany or something. And I'm like, no, this is just so it was just imaginative. It was a place where my mind as a child just flew. Like I
Mm-hmm.
remember jumping over logs and thinking like I'm like leaping, and now I'm older and I go to that log and I'm like, oh, I just had to step over this thing. But the game demands a level of imagination because the stakes of that game of like our flag is on that side, their flag is on this side. We have to get it and get it back to our side without someone tagging us. The stakes of that, the immediacy of that game is very, very high. So you get to that other side, you feel like you're in danger. Of course,
Mm-hmm.
you're just kids playing a game, but like if you get caught, you're caught. So you
Yeah.
have to sneak, you have to maneuver. Someone sees you, you got to book it. So there was just an immediacy and an urgency to that game that made it, I think, ripe for a group of kids who are also, or specifically one kid who's also kind of running away from what they're feeling
Mm-hmm.
towards the loss of their friend.
I love that. I love this piece so much. Um, so you started to talk about it. What inspired you to write this piece?
A number of things. My father is a loving man. He's a good man. But when he was young, his sister died, who would have been my Aunt Joanne. I guess still my Aunt Joanne, but he was a kid, so I've never known her. And there was no one around to talk to him about it. He kind of was ushered to like go out and play and like do that. And knowing my father the way I do, I can almost imagine the kind of person he could have been if someone had been there to talk him through what he was feeling and parsing through his grief instead of just like go out and play.
Yeah.
So that's the idea. Like, what happens when the adults, I don't want to say like abdicate their responsibility, but when the adults are like dealing with their own thing and they don't know how to talk to young people, and all the young people has is games and each other. I thought a lot about this girl who lived next door to me, whose name is Layla, and how she was from Saudi Arabia, and after 9/11, her house was egged and TP'd numerous times to the point where the family moved away. And Layla and we used to play all these games together. Now Layla doesn't play these games with us. And like Layla did not die, but like what does it mean for her not to be here and to have this vacancy due to a trauma, due to a harmful act? So the idea of my father and the idea of Layla and the truth of the games I played as a child all coalesced into this play.
I love that. I love that. So the children treat this game. They have a opening ceremony. They have a closing ceremony. They have roles. It's treated with such professionalism and polish. Why is it so important for them to repeat these formalities each summer?
I think it's the beauty of ritual and the beauty of rituals that come in childhood, right? Like the idea that a game is taught and passed down. I think about hand games a lot. Like I love them. And like I don't remember, like no adult taught me how to do a hand game. Like another kid was like, this is how you do this thing. And then I did it. And then I taught another kid how to do this thing. So even though that's not as ritualistic, there is like a proper way to do it that gets passed down from word of mouth. So if this is a game that is played in this neighborhood, like how long has it been played? Could this be the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th generation of kids playing this game? Oh, I had like an older brother who was like 17 and like I'm like 10, and I remember like being 3 and watching them play, and now it's my like so this idea that this is a part of our community, a part of how we engage, and something we can look forward to the same way you might look forward to like, oh, a 4th of July block party or like this other event that can happen in your neighborhood. But this one is only kids. It is like this is one of the few places, like maybe recess when you're a kid but you still have adult monitors, maybe lunchtime when you're a kid but you still have adult monitors, but those days when I was like 9 to like 12, 13 in the woods with my friends, it was just us. I mean, I'm certain my mother had binoculars somewhere, right? But like the feeling of it just being us and needing to have like, here is our code of conduct, so we can like know how we do this. Because we've all played games before, and someone says, "Yo, you didn't tag me like that," or like, "No, I had a shield." Like, here are the rules. This is how this is played, so we can have the most fun. And upholding that and passing that down through that word of mouth, through that being present, I think is something that kids, at least when I was a kid, and the kids I've worked with, I still see that, right? There's still like passing of a torch in games and playfulness.
That rite of passage is so important. I think it helps to build community amongst the children. It helps them to kind of figure out how to navigate social situations. So it is really important for them to I see that importance, to have these things and to have something for them to look forward to, especially when you're the younger sibling and you see that your older sibling and you're like, well, you did it, but I'm going to do it better. Or, you got to teach me your ways. Okay. How do I, sneak around? What are the best places? So I think that that's so important. I love the diversity of these characters. They are fully realized, working through this situation. They are dynamic. As I said earlier, they are recognizing that children and teenagers have these complex emotions that we sometimes as adults, because we don't know how to deal with these emotions, we're not able to help the kids or the teenagers in our lives work through these emotions, which we all have got to figure it out. We've all got to figure out how to support one another, because you can't just tell a kid, okay, well, just you'll be fine, or just go play, it'll be okay, because I still have to come to terms with the fact that loss is there.
Yeah.
Is there I want to say, I wrote down here, I was emotionally invested and heartbroken by the end of the prologue. I got to the end of the prologue scene, and I just was like, I have to read the rest of this. Oh, that's gonna okay, I'm ready. But it was a beautiful, beautiful read. Is there a character that you most identify with?
That is always a fun question, right? Because like so many of these people are like combinations of people in of my childhood and also imaginings and of kids that I teach now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I would say that early on, right, like when I first had the idea, the character of Hal, um, I thought could have been me, but that was also when I thought that maybe like this play is about a new kid coming into something that they don't
Mm-hmm.
know. And I was like, no, that's not what this play is. This play is not about like that's a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's not quite that. But I was a kid who moved into a neighborhood of kids who knew each other for a long time. And I was a kid who had to like play catch up and learn the games. Like that's when I learned how to play capture the flag after I'd
Mm-hmm.
moved to a new neighborhood. Um, so I'd say Hal. I'm not as fast as Hal. I was never the most athletic kid. Like yeah, I was
Me
decent, but
neither.
Hal has the best mile time, and I never did have the best mile time. Um, but yeah, a lot of these characters have pieces of them that are so clearly from the friendships, the gifts that my friends have offered to me over the years,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm just happy to imbue these imaginary people with the truth of people that I deeply love.
That's awesome. Why and not because I take issue with it,
Mhm.
but I'm just curious why you chose to have Ruby die as the inciting incident over her just moving away. I mean, I get it.
Yeah,
Intellectually, I get it.
yeah,
Emotionally, I'm still struggling.
yeah. I think it goes back to like what I think is important for young people to have and see.
Hmm.
Let's not for a second pretend, even though the rhetoric around COVID is always that, like, oh, it affects the elderly. Like, yes, it does affect the elderly. Yes, more of them are dying. But, like, children have lost friends.
Hmm.
Cousins have not come back. Like, loss is being felt at every level and will be felt for this generation till whenever.
Hmm.
Um, so in the writing of it, in those like 10 days, when I had to like decide, like I kind of knew that like death was going to be a part of it, but I had to like really once the pen is to paper, it's like, well, I guess that's what we're doing. I was like, is there another way?
Hmm.
And to go over what does it mean to lose someone that you cannot see again.
Hmm.
It's one thing if someone moves away and like maybe you can come visit them, maybe they come visit you. We have the internet now. There are other ways to stay in contact. It's another thing when like this person is literally gone and
Hmm.
they went so fast that there's not even a concept of
Yeah.
preparing. There's not even a concept of closure. And that again goes back to my father when his sister died. It was a freak accident.
Mm.
So there was no like, oh my gosh, like it was a thing that no one knew about, and then they knew about it, and by the time they knew, it was over. So
Wow.
that, and again, going back to like the inspiration, that is why Ruby dies. But as I like to talk to people about, like Ruby may not have a forward momentum in this play, but
Hmm.
she is in every aspect of this play. Like she has probably, if not the most lines, either the second or third most lines in this entire play.
Hmm.
So we still get to know her and we grow an attachment to her so that by the time the play is over, we the audience will also be missing Ruby. Like not just like, oh, I'm watching these kids miss her. It's like, oh, I'm watching these kids miss her. And now that the play is over, I'm like, oh, I
I'm,
also.
I miss her too.
Yeah.
It makes me it's interesting that you said that, because as soon as you talked about her not necessarily having a forward trajectory in the piece, it made me think about the way This Is Us is done, and how Milo Ventimiglia's character is throughout the series, but he dies early on. Spoiler alert to anybody who's just now starting the series. But and it's so interesting because he is a integral part of that story, even though he is not there. So I think that's beautiful. I mean, processing loss as an adult is hard. As a child, mourning a child is a strange loop to be in. That's a plug for Strange Loop.
Great show. Great. If you haven't seen it, go see Strange Loop. It's so good.
But it is like, how do you deal with that? Each character gets a memory. There are a couple characters that get memories, that we see their memories, and I love that it shows what you as a person, how that impact. They may not know, the person who has moved on may not know what impact they have, and it just shows the cherished moments that you take with you when someone is no longer with you. And I love the flashbacks. I love that so much, because it does show you how those kids were impacted. Things that come to a head when Layla gets captured.
Yeah.
Right. And she's sitting in. I also want to applaud you for only using the word die one time in this piece. And I don't know why. I struggle to put into words why I feel like that's so important, but it's like, I think with like Violetta, she almost gets there. I think she's talking to Hal, and she almost gets there, and then she's got to bring it back. She's like, I've not figured out how to process, and oh man, okay, so because the age range of the kids, they start from very young. It's like 7.
Yeah, the youngest kid is 7.
Up to like 11.
12.
12.
Yeah.
And so at 7, how do you even process? How do you what is the process of writing how a 7-year-old grieves?
Wow, that is a question. I have never stated that I am writing how someone is going to grieve. I'm not going to say I'm going to write how a 7-year-old is grieving. I will say I'm going to write how Penelope is grieving, because I do not have access to like 7-year-olds as a concept or 12-year-olds as a concept anymore. Like I don't, but I can talk about what does it mean to have different kinds of connections to people. Right? Like what, like I can imagine what it is to be a best friend and lose someone. I can imagine what it is to be a rival and lose someone. I can imagine what it is to have like some tension between someone and lose that person. And I also know what it's like or I can imagine what it is to lose someone who you could have known. Right? Like I didn't know you, but we were all here and now I don't get the chance, and I'm sad, but like I'm sad at a thing that was never mine.
Yeah.
So that's how I've always thought about it, instead of like I'm specifically talking about like this 7-year-old. I'm talking about young people, right? And I think I've done a fair job at like creating fully realized young people. But it's always been about how does this relationship grieve the loss of the potential or the reality of the relationship.
That's so well put. The stage directions and the descriptions, just of the scenic descriptions, are so vivid. They evoke such wonderful imagery. You can almost smell and feel summer, and feel the location. There is one such stage direction that or note that stuck out with me that I still carry and am still, figuring out is you wrote the sound of childhood spilling out of an hourglass. I mean, oh my goodness. Just goosebumps. I read that and I had to it was one of those moments where I know that an actor is going to have to bring that to life.
Yeah.
And just seeing it on I went through a host of emotions in that moment, and I had to pause and before I went forward. Where did that come from?
Another hard question.
I'm
First off,
I'm here with the heavy hitters
yeah,
today.
no. First off, I just want to say that I adore stage directions. I know that sometimes people are taught like ignore the playwright stage directions or whatever, whatever. And as an actor myself, as an actor who also like very much loves Shakespeare, like the text is only there to support you. The
Mm-hmm.
text is only there to help you. So stage directions in my process as a playwright are vastly important because it's the clues that I wish I had as an actor. I'm like, how do I play this scene? Oh, the sound of childhood spilling out of an hourglass. Cool. I don't know what that means yet, but I
Mm-hmm.
can work through that image and know what that image is doing to me and then respond to that in kind and create a performance that in this moment to my eyes represents that. But that came from again thinking about my father and not just about my father, but people in life when situations adultify them when they are still children. And
Mm-hmm.
it can be jarring, it can be over a long process of time depending on familial situation, but the idea of like something running out, that like Layla's been running and now this thing, this innocence that she's almost running to keep up with, but is like it's like once you know that there's an end, like what are the truths that you realize,
Mm-hmm.
right? And one of them is like there is an ending to
Mm-hmm.
all things. So that's where that came from, the idea of like I am running from something and that thing is now running out. What runs out? Time runs out. How does it run out? You spill, like you knock over an hourglass in sand. Um, and yeah, it was also in the moment. Like I said, I wrote this play rather quickly and there have been changes, of course, but that was um, one of those rare gifts of this just happened. And it was one of the that was a moment, that was a line that appeared because of the labor and the
Mm-hmm.
work, right? Like it's not just like inspiration, haha, it's done. It's like no, like I said, that this idea of a play has been churning in me, and school is often saying that you are always writing, even if it's not pen to paper, fingers to type. Like you are, as a writer, as an artist, as a person, are always imagining and writing. So I just want to uplift that. I know if that's kind of a detour, but I want to uplift that like the miracles on the page happen because of the labor put in prior to. And the
Mm-hmm.
moment it feels miraculous, but nah, like you have been churning that butter this whole time.
I want to say, I want to close with it saying, I want to say something and ask one question.
Yeah.
Um, when I finished reading this piece, the last thing that I wrote was because the last line of this piece is beautiful. And that is what I wrote. I wrote, that's beautiful. Um, because it is a beautiful piece of art. And I'm so glad and grateful that you shared that piece with us. What is the next step in the process for Capture the Flag? What's
Yeah,
next?
I mean it's the process that I'm really starting to understand. I've never been one of my crosses, not crosses, that's a little too serious. I'm learning how to be a business playwright.
Mm-hmm.
I'm learning how to not just write the thing, but like take the meeting, make the phone call, do the connection, get people interested. It is a 2A piece. I think it would do great for professional actors to be done, but also like young people specifically, like a middle school acting group, or even a high school acting group. I'd say like, yeah, you could, like, we have a high schoolers play like the importance of being earnest all the time. So like if they can play older, they can play younger.
Yeah.
So that's where we're at now. I know that I've talked with Adventure Theater a little bit about possible future of this play, and we want to do possibly like a design workshop of the piece to see and imagine what like this forest can really be. But it's really just figuring out a home, because sadly, theater is expensive, not just to go see, but also to make. And this is a play with 11 actors, and there is no part of me that wants this play to ever be a play in which actors aren't getting paid properly. Right. So a theater company needs to have the resources to be able to adequately pay those people, or have a middle school program that has enough people and the resources to support them. So that's like the next step that hasn't been taken yet. It's right now being sent out. It's being read. It's getting a lot of good feedback and praise from people. But then the dollar sign kind of always comes up. Like,
absolutely.
Right. While I think the forest can be done beautifully and on budget and cheaply, it's the human labor of it all that is always a question.
And the creatives, thank you for wanting us to get paid appropriately.
Get paid. Get paid.
Thank you, Doug, so much for joining me today. This was an absolutely remarkable work of art. Congratulations, because
thank you.
I loved it, and I cannot wait to see what happens next. I am interested. I'm just gonna put that out there in directing this piece, because then I'll learn how to play Capture the Flag. It'll be great. That will be the first day of rehearsal. We will play Capture the Flag. See, I've already started thinking about how we're gonna do it, so it's fine. But thank you so much. I really enjoyed this. I want to thank everyone for joining us for another episode of Artistically Black. And remember, stay artistic and stay Black. Thanks, everybody.